The render network is in the process of a major upgrade that I think is going to have a significant impact on the utility of the network going forward. We're talking about a burn mint equilibrium, which has just been activated on the network that promises to ensure the lowest cost per render for artists. Now, it's a bit complex, but don't worry, I've spent the better part of 3 days dissecting the subject, gathering information, so that way we know what to expect. Because again, once you break this all down, one thing we're going to find out is that render just might be the ultimate utility token. Now, let's just jump right into this. So, the render network, burn mint equilibrium emissions are now live on Solana. The upgrade allows rendering and AI jobs to be paid on chain in render, the network's recently upgraded token, which is now on the Solana blockchain. The Render network's new BME model enables the network to consistently price services using a supply and demand equilibrium, which helps creators to forecast rendering and AI jobs cost while also facilitating node operators to efficiently provide computing services. By employing this model, the Render network aims to provide an ideal balance between supply, demand, and infrastructure in GPU processing. So I really had to do some digging to figure out what a supply demand equilibrium even was. And when I learned what it is, I was actually very impressed with Render implementing this into their network. What this basically means is that the cost in Render will fluctuate based on the supply and demand of computing power available. So what this means is that now the Render network is fully distributing their computing power across a wide network and basing the price of doing render jobs on the amount of render or GPU power available at that time. So if you're a graphic design artist, motion artist, and you go to do a job in render, you'll oftentimes get the lowest price possible for the maximum amount of GPU rendering. That process is very important. It's going to be very attractive to graphic designers, motion graphics companies, things like that, because they're getting the same amount of power at a much cheaper rate. That's the key there. Now, there's another element too, and I didn't see this in the documentation, but this is just a formula that I put together, because you also have to keep in mind that as part of this mechanism, render will get burned per job, right? So you're upping the incentive by making the cost lower. On the other hand, though, that's going to increase the demand for the render token, which when we take a look at the 7-day price chart for render as of 12/29, we'll not only see a lot of volatility, but we'll see that 69% of the render token is already in circulation. They have a max of 537 million roughly. So what's going to happen is the demand for the token is going to increase, and that means that more people are going to have to buy it to do jobs. This could include individual artists or major companies, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, that they're lining those up too. So that's going to have an impact on that. And something else I see coming too are more exchange listings, because render is only available in a few places. I get it from Uphold. That's why the thing keeps, popping up. But more exchange listings are coming. And then on top of that, render's all-time high, $8.76. We're only 50% away from that. A strong 50% move. And we're back at all-time highs for render. Because we're in a bull market, I'm going to assume we're going to get another 50% after that, which would put us at $12 probably by the end of the year. Now, I just published an episode yesterday on Bitcoin where we actually talked about supply and demand dynamics, the impact on the ETFs, the timing, and how it all fits into the halving and what we can expect post-halving after April. Well, before the halving, I expect a correction, which will be 5 to 10% for Bitcoin, but 15 to 20 for a lot of these altcoins. Render will be included. So we could be looking at a potential buy window coming within the first quarter of 2024. And keep that in mind, as well as the fact that this new burn mechanism has been implemented. So we'll move from 473 roughly will pull back to about $3. I'm just assuming here. But again, we're 50% away from that all-time high at $8.76, and another 100% move will put us north of $12. This new mechanism is going to increase demand while reducing supply. So there's a lot of factors to be considered here. Now, something else that's going on in the community, we have a proposal that just went through, RMP 006. This is basically the community voted on incentives for users choosing to upgrade their RNDR to RENDR. There is 1.14 million set aside for the first 220 million people that decide to upgrade. There is a link that I will find and put under this video if you want to transfer any of your render that you may have on the Solana network or on the Ethereum network still, and it's in a self-custody wallet, right? I would assume that the exchanges that hold render, they've already done this. I know Uphold has already updated the branding for the render network, and I believe Coinbase too. But this reward incentive mechanism started in November, right? And the first of the 220 million, the first 40 million people, they received the highest amount of rewards for converting their old render into the new render. The thing is, this is going to continue until October of this year. So we're going to have a lot of activity in the render network when it comes to that token, people buying and transferring, so forth and so on. So another element just to consider when we're talking about what's the render network is going to be doing in 2024 and the effects of this upgrade. Now, outside of the fundamentals, I was able to find an interview courtesy of the Proof of Coverage podcast. It was a great interview they did with the founder, Jules Urbach of Render, as well as the COO of Otoy and the director of the Render Network Foundation, Dr. Trevor Jones. Now, he's going to tell us who's been using the Render Network and who's about to use the Render Network, and he's going to highlight a company called Redshift. Now, when we get back, I'm going to explain to you why that's massive.
We started out really trying to solve for motion graphics artists who were creating motion graphics, be it simple videos or animations or NFTs. And at the start, it was also artists that used Octane Render. So that was really what seeded the network. What it's become more recently is obviously much more than that. We've added third-party renderers in Maxon's products, so Redshift and some of its other renderers. And also, you can't ignore the AI use case that's emerged the past year and a half or so. And so we've gone from a very narrow niche at the start to now a very broad usage of the network that includes multiple renderers as well as AI jobs actually running on the network. And there was a tweet series we posted yesterday about the first inference of diffusion jobs on the network using one of our first compute client partners. And it's really exciting to us as we see these use cases unfold.
So like I said, Dr. Jones is the director of the Render Network Foundation. And when you want to find out who the Render Network actually works with, you have to go through the foundation documentation. All right. You can't just Google Render Network partners and get the same type of rap sheet you get for some of these other assets. No, you got to really look around. But you'll learn that Apple, Nvidia, Google, and Microsoft have already joined up. Okay. And when you look at a list of the top GPU renderers in the space, Nvidia, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Redshift. So that's why I said them working with Redshift, that's a newer partner. That's the fang of GPU processing, the top 5 companies when it comes to GPU processing. And this includes artificial intelligence, gaming, machine learning. It really spans across the board. So going back to the mechanism that they just implemented, it's going to increase the demand for the render token because there are cheaper ways to do what the mainstream companies have been doing for years. It's about to flip the whole business model upside down. It really is. That's something else that he talked about in that full interview, which I'll leave a link to their website, Proof of Coverage podcast, if you're interested in that. Now, another factor here. Not a lot of people know. Not a lot of people know how tied render is. As a matter of fact, this is a story that was published in CoinGate back in June, where Apple was holding an event and they featured a render network application, the Octane X, which we've covered in previous episodes on render before. This uses iOS and render network software to allow people from their iPhone to generate NFTs, graphic designs, those AI generated images that everyone is using on their thumbnails now, all types of stuff. I just find it interesting that people really don't know about that yet. So, with this new mechanism coming into place, increasing demand, people are going to be looking for the token, which means that more exchange listings are coming. And when more exchanges list a token, more people talk about the token. Network effect at its finest. Now, last thing we're going to jump into, this is from November. This is the Solana Breakpoint Conference, but the Render Network brought in IO.net. This is going to basically, they state the partnership with Render, an established DePIN network of distributed GPU suppliers, provides computing resources already deployed on the platform to IO.net. Render's network is primarily aimed at sourcing GPU rendering computing at lower costs and faster speeds than centralized cloud solutions. They describe the partnership as a win-win situation, with the company looking to tap into IO.net's clustering capabilities to use the GPU to compute it has access to but cannot be used for rendering applications. IO.net will carry out a $700,000 incentive program for GPU's resource providers, while render nodes can expand their existing GPU capacity from graphically rendering to AI and machine learning applications. The program is aimed at users with consumer-grade GPUs categorized as hardware from NVIDIA RTXs and under. So again, mentioning that ecosystem partner, what that is going to bring to the Render Network, now they have another partner in pulling in resources, computing resources. So tying that in to the burn model, the increase in demand for the Render Network is now going to come from a wider source of people looking to get these jobs done. And that's what's going to give Render Network the advantage. How much GPU can they distribute or pull from? That's going to impact how many jobs that they can create and how many tokens get used. And when you look at the study on the GPU market, this is the last thing I got for you. It's courtesy of Precedence Research. The GPU market is expected to grow 33.8% over the next 8 years. Ladies and gentlemen, from 2023 to 2032, we're talking about $773 billion market here. All right. Now, notice the key market drivers here: gaming, virtual reality, and augmented reality. A lot of people don't know this, but in 2018, in Render Networks and Otoy, all right, the parent company of Render, in their original press release for the token, the very first partner that they mentioned was Decentraland. And I find it so funny that they wrote Decentraland, they mentioned Decentraland as a virtual reality project in 2018, ladies and gentlemen. Not a metaverse token, a virtual reality project. Now, what's so funny about that is the very last time I looked into Decentraland, the very last thing that they were working on was a brand new desktop client that allowed people to access Decentraland from their computer or their mobile device, and virtual reality. Yeah. Look, we have a list of assets on the channel, and Decentraland has made that index. The Power 42 index is a list of assets that we're going to cover on the channel. Link will be in the description. Make sure you check that out. But other market drivers, machine learning, AI, IO.net just brought that into the discussion. But key players here: Google, NVIDIA. All right, they're already Render Network partners, but we also have Qualcomm, Intel, IBM. IBM has been very active in the crypto space. There's actually a DHN crypto doc coming out about IBM's activity going back years. We're going to cover that. So make sure you subscribe to the doc's channel. So that's the news, though, guys. Again, Render Network, this burn mint equilibrium is pretty much the mathematics that they needed to solidify the network. Like I said in my last render post, last render episode. I still can't find a flaw. Still can't find a flaw. With that though, make sure you check out Uphold, guys. They're doing instant withdrawals now. Keep your crypto bags liquid. Also, again, look at the Power 42 index for this year. Make sure your asset made the list. With that, you know what I want you to do. Have a great day. Have a prosperous day. And always remember, if the money is digital, so is the hustle.